Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
It is the question that has hung over Donald Trump's young administration. Did Russia help his election campaign? And did anyone on his team know it was happening? Today, in a rare and extraordinary move, the FBI confirmed they are investigating possible links. Intelligence chiefs have been testifying in front of US politicians. And they've also said there is no evidence that Britain's GCHQ was involved in a wiretap on Donald Trump, contradicting a claim made by the president. Our North America editor John Sopel was watching.
The Kremlin has cast a long shadow over American politics in the last year. What's more or less accepted by all sides is that Russian intelligence hacked computers belonging to the Democratic Party before the election. But from that, one question: was there collusion between the Trump campaign and Moscow? The president says that is fake news. Then there's the allegation that Barack Obama tapped the phones in Trump Tower before the election, perhaps using British agents from GCHQ. Big questions for a big man. At 6'8", James Comey stands head and shoulders above all around him. So would he stick his neck out today at this hearing? Answer: yes.
The FBI, as part of our counterintelligence mission, is investigating the Russian government's efforts to interfere in the 2016 presidential election. And that includes investigating the nature of any links between individuals associated with the Trump campaign and the Russian government, and whether there was any coordination between the campaign and Russia's efforts.
On the detail of the investigation into Russian collusion, James Comey wouldn't be drawn. But what about the president's claims that his predecessor, Barack Obama, had wiretapped Trump Tower? Here, he was more forthcoming.
With respect to the president's tweets about alleged wiretapping directed at him by the prior administration, I have no information that supports those tweets, and we have looked carefully inside the FBI.
So President Obama could not unilaterally order a wiretap of anyone?
No president could.
The president accused Mr. Obama and presumably the FBI of engaging in McCarthyism. Were you engaged in McCarthyism, Director Comey?
Try very hard not to engage in any isms of any kind, including McCarthyism.
Then Congressman Schiff turned to the director of the National Security Agency to answer questions about British involvement. Again, the responses were unequivocal.
Did you ever request that your counterparts in GCHQ should wiretap Mr. Trump on behalf of President Obama?
No, sir, nor would I. That would be expressly against the construct of the Five Eyes Agreement that's been in place for decades.
Our British allies have called the president's suggestion that they wiretapped him for Obama nonsense and utterly ridiculous. Would you agree?
Yes, sir.
Does it do damage to our relationship with one of our closest intelligence partners for the president to make a baseless claim that the British participated in a conspiracy against him?
I think it clearly frustrates a key ally of ours. I believe that the relationship is strong enough. This is something we'll be able to deal with.
This committee hearing has been uncomfortable for President Trump, but there may be solace for him in this. The inquiry could take months or even years to be completed. And in the meantime, he'll seek to move the conversation onto other subjects.
And John joins us now from Washington. John, just how damaging is this all for Donald Trump?
Well, any way you cut it, George, this was a kind of core blimey moment. I mean, the idea that the FBI, the principal law enforcement agency, is announcing that it is investigating whether the Trump campaign acted in collusion with the Russian government to subvert the outcome of the US election is extraordinary enough. Not only that, the FBI director then goes on to say that actually what the president tweeted 16 days ago was incorrect. There was no wiretapping by Obama. There was no help from GCHQ. That leaves Donald Trump in a very exposed position. Now, he is saying it's all fake news. There was no collusion with the Russians. He is saying that before the FBI has even reached its conclusion. It's like he wants to shape the field of play before that. And one other thing that he's done today, he's announced that he's to become a grandfather again. That might also take attention away.
John, thank you.
The FBI investigation into alleged interference by Russia in the US election will include any potential coordination between the Trump campaign associates and Russia's government. But only hours before the FBI Director James Comey appeared before the House Intelligence Committee, President Trump tweeted again that the whole Russian story was fake news. Mr. Comey also said neither the FBI nor the Justice Department had any evidence to support the president's claims of being wiretapped by the former president, Mr. Obama. Our Washington correspondent, Kylie Morris, joins us now. Kylie.
John, I was in that hearing on Capitol Hill this morning. You've been there. You know they can be a bit dull, but this one was the complete opposite, absolutely electric. I think there was so much anticipation over what this testimony from Jim Comey might confirm, and he delivered two bombshells, really. The first, yes, the FBI is looking at possible links between Trump campaign associates and the Russians, asking whether there's evidence to prove collusion as part of its probe into election meddling by Moscow that's been ongoing since last July. And secondly, that whole President Obama wiretap Trump Tower tweet storm that President Trump launched a few weeks ago, not supported by a scintilla of evidence.
Director Comey, do you have a minute?
Comey's coming. He's in my shot.
Through the crowded corridors of Capitol Hill, the towering figure of James Comey was the FBI director who Democrats blame for crueling Hillary Clinton's presidential chances, now ready to deliver the dirt on the Trump campaign. If anyone was in any doubt as to how high the stakes were,
if the Trump campaign or anyone associated with it aided or abetted the Russians, it would not only be a serious crime, it would also represent one of the most shocking betrayals of democracy in history.
In the hours leading up to the hearing, President Trump called the claim fake news, a story made up by the Democrats. But the FBI boss was ready with a fact check to blow all that fakery away.
I have been authorized by the Department of Justice to confirm that the FBI, as part of our counterintelligence mission, is investigating the Russian government's efforts to interfere in the 2016 presidential election. And that includes investigating the nature of any links between individuals associated with the Trump campaign and the Russian government, and whether there was any coordination between the campaign and Russia's efforts.
Take a moment, breathe it in. The FBI is investigating whether the Trump campaign colluded with the Russians to win. It was all there in black and white with pink neon marker for emphasis.
I can promise you we will follow the facts wherever they lead.
It's clear where they weren't leading, anywhere to support President Trump's Twitter claims that President Obama ordered a phone tap on Trump Tower.
With respect to the president's tweets about alleged wiretapping directed at him by the prior administration, I have no information that supports those tweets.
So President Obama could not unilaterally order a wiretap of anyone?
No president could.
As for the suggestion repeated by the White House that GCHQ might have been involved,
did you ever request that your counterparts in GCHQ should wiretap Mr. Trump on behalf of President Obama?
No, sir, nor would I. That would be expressly against the construct of the Five Eyes Agreement that's been in place for decades.
the White House spokesman who shared the false GCHQ claim that so angered Admiral Rogers was back at his podium this afternoon, responding to questions over the newly confirmed FBI investigation.
So you can continue to look for something, but continuing to look for something that doesn't exist doesn't matter.
But it does matter to many Americans who want to know definitively whether collusion with the Kremlin helped put Donald Trump in the White House.
We'll certainly be following that one.
Now, to be successful, the relationship between a head of state and his or her intelligence services must surely be based on a pretty profound level of basic trust. Even before today, that was in short supply, understatement of the year, between President Trump and the FBI. And today, its boss did nothing at all to patch things up. James Comey confirmed his agents are indeed investigating links between Russia and the president's election campaign team. Oh, and Mr. Comey says he can find no evidence whatsoever to support his current president's claim that he was spied on the orders of his past president, Barack Obama. So another bizarre day in Trumpland, like most others, in fact.
At 6'8", the FBI director always commands attention. But it was his words alone today which stopped Washington in its tracks. James Comey confirmed that the Trump campaign team is under FBI investigation and has been for 9 months.
The FBI as part of our counterintelligence mission, is investigating the Russian government's efforts to interfere in the 2016 presidential election, and whether there was any coordination between the campaign and Russia's efforts.
Russia, if you're listening, I hope you're able to find the 30,000 emails that are missing.
And it's now clear that even as Donald Trump was joking about Russia on the campaign trail, the FBI was already on the case. And relations between the president and the FBI, cordial at best, will be even more damaged.
The department has no information that supports those tweets.
And there was more bad news for the president. The FBI chief dismissed completely his tweeted claim that Trump Tower was wiretapped on the authority of President Obama.
With respect to the president's tweets about alleged wiretapping directed at him by the prior administration, I have no information that supports those tweets.
Meanwhile, at the White House, if the president felt embattled, his spokesman showed no sign of it.
One day it's kind of quiet.
Expressing confidence, the FBI investigation would find nothing.
Investigating it and having proof of it are two different things. So you can continue to look for something, but continuing to look for something that doesn't exist doesn't matter.
But it certainly matters for Democrats like Felipe Reines, a former aide of Hillary Clinton. He believes her presidential chances were harmed by Comey last summer when he announced an FBI investigation into her emails.
At the very same month that he did that they opened a criminal investigation into now President Donald Trump is maddening.
President Trump's tonight bound for Kentucky. This FBI investigation will take months to play out, fueling the conspiracy and the paranoia surrounding his administration.
And Penny joins us now from Washington. Penny, let's be blunt. The president seems to, on occasions, just simply make stuff up, or so it seems. And yet, is there any evidence that it's actually damaging him, really, yet, with his supporters at least?
Well, it certainly doesn't feel that America and Donald Trump's administration are in any way moving forward. As soon as one question about him is answered, another one is posed. And this isn't at all helpful. There's a febrile atmosphere in Washington, and government has to continue. There are some really big issues and challenges that America and the world faces. Tonight, for example, news is breaking that American inbound flights, that passengers coming from countries from the Middle East and from some African countries are going to face a really heightened procedures of security, banning electronic equipment, in some cases entirely from cabins. Now, that is quite a significant security risk. And while you see the Trump administration firefighting like this at every turn, there is a real risk that their attention is diverted.
OK, Penny, thank you very much indeed.
They'll probably make a movie about it at some point. The accusations being levelled at Donald Trump and the accusations levelled by him. Public officials in the US have been caught up in a highly politicised process of inquiry into FBI and National Security Agency investigations. For Democrats, the issue is the possibility that the Trump campaign colluded with the Russian state in its attempts to hurt candidate Hillary Clinton. For the Republicans, the issue is the illegal leaks that have brought certain of these matters to public attention. Well, the House Intelligence Committee held hearings on these matters today with James Comey, the director of the FBI, and Mike Rogers, director of the National Security Council. And yes, Britain did get an honourable mention in the proceedings. Here's Newsnight's own intelligence expert, Mark Urban.
It was bound to be dramatic. Two spy chiefs cross-examined publicly for the first time on an emerging investigation into the Kremlin's role in the US election.
The FBI, as part of our counterintelligence mission, is investigating the Russian government's efforts to interfere in the 2016 presidential election. And that includes investigating the nature of any links between individuals associated with the Trump campaign and the Russian government, and whether there was any coordination between the campaign and Russia's efforts.
Time and again, committee members asked what Russian President Putin aimed to gain from hacking and leaks.
It wasn't simply that the Russians had a negative preference against Secretary Clinton. They also had a positive preference for Donald Trump. Isn't that correct?
Correct.
And on Putin's aim to weaken the West, there was this extraordinary exchange also.
Would they have a preference for a candidate who encouraged Brexit and other departures from Europe? Would they like to see more Brexits?
Yes.
Many times the witnesses were asked about President Trump's statements on Twitter, including the allegation that Trump Tower was bugged by President Obama.
With respect to the president's tweets about alleged wiretapping directed at him by the prior administration, I have no information that supports those tweets.
And as for the idea, lent credence by the White House, that Britain's GCHQ had performed the interception of Trump's communications, the director of America's eavesdropping agency said this.
I've seen nothing on the NSA side that we engaged in any such activity, nor that anyone ever asked us to engage in such activity.
And if you were to ask the British to spy on America, that would be a violation of U.S. law, would it not?
Yes, sir.
In broad terms, the Five Eyes Agreement includes an agreement not to spy on one another. So that's sort of the foundation of the agreement. But beyond that, each country has constraints within their own domestic law that say that they cannot use other Five Eyes partners or any other intelligence service in order to circumvent the constraints of their domestic law. So anything that the United States intelligence community is not able to do themselves, they are not able to ask a foreign intelligence partner to do that on their behalf against Americans.
But while the hearing produced some light, new disclosure, it also produced much heat. Partisan, tactical questioning, with Republicans emphasizing not Russian actions, but the seriousness of leaking about them.
Doesn't that leak hurt our national security?
Yes, sir.
Can you think of any reason why somebody would want to leak the identity of a masked person?
No, sir.
And Democrats asked questions which stood no chance of being answered because of the ongoing investigation, just to put certain allegations on the record.
Do you think that Mr. Flynn's failure to disclose the communication and contact he had with the Russian ambassador and their topic of conversation, along with a blatant lie to Vice President Pence, meet the standard for an investigation by the FBI?
I have to give you the same answer. I'm not going to comment.
As for collusion between the Trump campaign and the Russians, the White House today brushed aside the whole idea.
The point at which you continue to search for something that everybody who's been briefed hasn't seen or found. I think it's fine to look into it, but at the end of the day, they're going to come to the same conclusion that everybody else has had. So you can continue to look for something, but continuing to look for something that doesn't exist.
What we've learned today is that Trump and his people will be under scrutiny for months to come about their alleged ties with Russia, and the FBI's judgments could prove critical to his survival.
Mark Urban. Well, a little earlier, I spoke to Republican Congressman Will Hurd, who's a member of the House Intelligence Committee and was also, in fact, a former undercover agent for the CIA. I asked him how credible it was that intelligence agencies ordered by President Obama had wiretapped candidate Trump.
Well, I think it was clear a couple of days ago when leadership of both the House and Senate Intelligence Committees indicated there was no evidence of such. And then today, during our recent hearing, the director of the FBI, Comey, confirmed that he had no indication, and that he also said that was the same for Department of Justice. And then Admiral Rogers, the director of the NSA, confirmed that as well. And Admiral Rogers also confirmed that they would never have requested a foreign intelligence agency to do something like that as well.
I think a lot of President Trump supporters would say, those people would say that. They're not going to say, yeah, we were told to and we did it. I mean, in a way, they're just not going to, Trump supporters are just not going to accept the evidence, are they?
Well, I don't know if I agree with that premise. I think one thing that the American people should be happy with is that the separation and checks and balances in our government is working. The fact that you have folks from the majority party in the House and the Senate disagreeing with the executive branch is a sign that this is the process is working. I haven't seen any indication from folks, rank and file Americans being concerned with this. I think what they are concerned with is they want to see this investigation in the Russian involvement in our elections be done in a bipartisan, thoughtful, and deliberate manner.
Well, that clearly would be where the American people are. But do you, heart of heart, think that is what you could say the Intelligence Committee were today, that they were bipartisan? Because the Republicans seem more concerned with the leaks. Obviously, the Democrats were concerned with potential collusion between the Trump team and the Russians. And it did seem to be falling down party lines to a large degree.
Well, I think we got to start with the fact that the scope of our investigation has been made public. That is something that generally doesn't happen. And we're looking at 4 areas. We're looking at what technical means did the Russians use in order to try to manipulate our elections? Are there any Americans associated with Russian intelligence that colluded with the Russians? We're also looking at what was the government response to these actions and whether those could be improved in the future. And the 4th area is the leaks. And I think both sides, Republicans and Democrats, made it clear that even though somebody may be focusing on one particular area, that's not an indication that the other areas don't matter.
And what you've just spelled out seems like the really substantive, nitty-gritty issue facing your committee. But then along comes the president with his allegation that Obama ordered his Trump Tower to be wiretapped. Is that just a silly distraction? What is going on there? What accounts for why that big thing would be thrown into your proceedings?
Well, you'll have to ask the president that question because I don't have any perspective. I always rely on guidance and advice my father has given me. My dad is 85 years old, and he's told all my friends right before they got married that it never hurts to say you're sorry, and I think that's the case here.
Just one last one. Do you think the president, if he believes the things he says and the things he tweets, as someone who's been working in intelligence yourself not that long ago, do you believe he understands how it really functions and really works?
Well, I think there can be a whole lot more precision used in language with everybody involved in this scenario. We can't think of press reporting as if it's intelligence. Some of my Democratic colleagues try to use some information gleaned from the press as if it's proper evidence that's going to stand up in the court of law. I think we need to be precise in the use of terms like wiretapping. We need to be precise in how this information is gleaned. And ultimately, when it comes to intelligence and law enforcement, much of this should not be done in the public eye until after it's concluded. And I think the American people and honestly the world have an appetite to know what's going on right now. But when it comes to law enforcement investigations and intelligence investigations, these things take time. And when we talk about them, all of our language needs to be a lot more precise.
Congressman Will Hurd, thank you very much. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me on.